is our actually our final presentation of the semester. So we have the distinct pleasure of having Mr. Michael Gamerl. Michael is going to speak for the next 20 minutes about his background as a business executive in education. As you may have seen from his bio, he graduated from Bellarmine in 1986, and as he was just talking about, he was a classmate and is a good friend of General McKean. He, upon graduation, he went to UC Irvine, graduated from there, and also got a master's at the London School of Economics, and he'll touch on each of those. And then he has spent many years as an executive, mostly in education. As you look at his resume, a big portion of his career was spent at the Princeton Review. So he'll be able to talk to that. He's traveled all over the world, in various capacities. And as part of that, he's advised countries with respect to their education standards as well as standardized testing. Obviously, for our upperclassmen, juniors, and seniors, he's going to have a lot of insight in terms of the college application process as well as standardized testing as it applies to the colleges. So with that, and then lastly, he's also, if you look at his background, he's also taught at the college level. So he has a ton of experience. And with that, without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Mike Gamerl.
Thank you very much, Pat. Appreciate it. Really, really happy to be with you guys and just kind of share with you my experience. I don't sit here thinking for a second that I've got it all figured out. And hopefully you can listen to guys like me and I know some of the other folks that you've talked to and had these sessions with. And what I like to say is I hope you guys make original mistakes. Because don't make the same mistakes that Pat and I made, right? I mean, make original mistakes, because that means you're pushing it, you're trying different things, and hopefully you can take away some of the items from my experience and get you thinking. So with that, I'll just jump into the presentation, which I use just to kind of frame the discussion. I really want to be quick about it so that we can get to as many questions as possible. So hopefully you see the presentation moving around. I was born in Japan, to be specific. I was born in Okinawa. Came to America when I was 3 years old. So, I mean, I'm as American as apple pie. But I didn't appreciate sort of the international background that I had until much later in life. I currently live in Laguna Beach in Southern California. And if you're not, and yes, it does look that awesome. It is just spectacular. Hopefully you guys have a chance to come down here and visit. This is my amazing wife, and we love adventure, and we do like to travel. As Pat mentioned, we've had the pleasure of visiting many, many countries, whether for work or for pleasure. Here we are with Santa, and this was in Finland. And that was just an amazing, amazing time. And also, I happen to be on the board of a nonprofit organization that helps with homelessness. I'm actually the treasurer for that organization, and that's very important to myself and to my wife. By way of education, since I grew up in the Bay Area, you probably know of St. Victor's. Heck, I don't know, maybe even some of you went to St. Victor's. And then obviously, I went to Bellarmine, and that was just fantastic. I can't tell you how much that was a part of shaping who I was. I did not have the maturity to handle girls, so being in an all-boys school was definitely a part of my success. As Pat mentioned, I went to UC Irvine, so I went from a charger to a bell to an anteater. And then I finished off as a beaver. I'm not sure if that's a better trajectory or if it got worse, but hey, there you go. Again, I was mentioning earlier how I didn't have an appreciation for my international background, being born in another country. And as I got older, and certainly my time in London was a big part of recognizing first of all, my interest in international affairs, and just my love of travel and things of that nature. And that certainly played out as I got more involved with work items. Specific to that, I finished my schooling and I got a job with a company called Maxell. Now, you guys don't know what this is, but you're going to have to ask your mom and dad. This is an audio cassette. And this is the world famous Maxell blow-away guy, which was part of really a world famous campaign to say that this reproduced medium, whether it's video or audio, was just so amazing it'll blow you away. So I did that. I'm obviously dating myself because it's so long ago. But I was working with Maxell Corporation on the professional industrial side. So I was going to LA and working with the Hollywood studios and the recording, the recording studios, all of that kind of stuff. And this is back in the days of magnetic tape. In fact, digital was just coming out. So yes, you're gonna have to ask your mom and dad about video cassettes and audio cassettes because I know it's not your world. From my time at Maxell, I actually then took a hard turn, and I worked at a place called the Ocean Institute. Pat mentioned that I do have a teaching background. I taught for many years, anywhere from kindergarten through to graduate level classes and students, and kind of everything in between. And working with Maxell was in a sales capacity. Working at the Ocean Institute was more of going back to my roots as a teacher and teaching kids about marine science. My degree, by the way, my master's in economics is also a master's of science. I actually have a background in physical oceanography, so that's kind of part of it as well. The bulk of my career was with the Princeton Review. I don't have to tell you what they do because I'm sure you know it very well. And I actually started off as a teacher, just teaching SAT classes while I was at UCI. I got more involved and did lots of different things. And when I left the Ocean Institute, I worked full-time at the Princeton Review. I was actually a part owner of a Princeton Review franchise. So I was a Princeton Review franchisee back when they used to have franchises in the US. And did that for, my gosh, more than a decade. And then we sold our franchise back to corporate Princeton Review, worked with the corporate office for quite a while, and then have since started my own company in this education sector, in this education vertical, given my experience with education. Now, with regard to what I've done and kind of how I've been all over the world and doing things in education, everyone who asks me what I do, they always kind of scratch their head and they say, I don't really quite understand what you do. And then they end up saying that they think that really I'm a spy. And I cannot confirm, nor will I deny that I am a spy, but my education, you can't see me, but I'm using air quotes, education background has had me do some really amazing stuff. So for example, right now, I'm working with Dalhousie University there in Nova Scotia, and I'm working on an economics curriculum piece for their College of Continuing Education. I have advised many different governments. I'm currently working on a project with the UAE government. And the UAE has both a federal government and then they have their individual emirates, which you can kind of think of as the national US government or the federal US government, and then individual states. My current project is actually with I'll call it the state of Dubai, which is one of the emirates. And that's super amazing. And then my most current project, well, actually, a lot of these are running concurrently. But a project that I'm working on right now is with a Korean ed tech company using AI for assessments and for learning. Again, it's just fascinating, and even though they're all different, they're all within this education vertical or this education sector. Now, before we get to questions, I want to run through just a few things from my experience. Again, hopefully you guys can glean some things. And the first one is this concept of balance. And you got to think about, why are you working so hard? Like, what are you busting your butt for? And I love this quote by Lily Tomlin. Again, you're going to have to ask your mom and dad about Lily Tomlin. I love her. I think she's just fantastic. And sad that she's no longer with us. But I love it, right? So what are you working your butt off? And you work so hard for what? To just be the rat? Or to be the number one rat? And so this concept of balance is something that I'm sure you've heard of, but you really want to think about it. Now, at the same time, guys, we need to be realistic, and you need to make money. So, and you need to make money to pay the rent. You need to make money to do the things that you want to do. And a good example of that is when I left school and I had that job with Maxell in a sales role, I made a ton of money. I didn't like the job, but I made a ton of money, and I was able to buy a house. I was able to do a lot of things, but then I could go to the Marine Institute or the Ocean Institute. And by the way, when I worked at the Ocean Institute, I made minimum wage. So here I am, out of grad school, having been a professional in sales for a couple of years, and then I go back to making minimum wage. I will disagree with our friend Steve Jobs here, because I don't buy this for a second. Now, I think that he was actually trying to say something else, because let's face it, we have to work hard and we have to do a good job. Think about the classes that you're in, right? You might not like a certain class, but you're going to do good work. In fact, you're going to do great work because you want to get high marks. So you might be going, oh my God, Mr. Healy's class is really, really tough, man. Yeah, I had him. I know it was tough. And it wasn't my favorite class, although I've come to very much appreciate that class in later years. But even if you don't like it, you gotta just put up or shut up, and you gotta work hard and get things done. I think what he was really trying to say was, look, if you can do what you love to do, well, then the hard work isn't such a drag. It becomes something that you can really, really enjoy, because again, hopefully you can do what you love to do. Now, the reality is you probably are going to have to do some jobs that you don't love in order to be able to do the thing that you love. And with that, I'm getting into the second thing, which is challenges. You're going to face challenges. When I left grad school, not that I thought that I knew everything, but I figured, okay, I'm a reasonably smart guy, and I've gone to some good schools, and I've taken some amazing programs, and I've learned a lot, and I've been successful. So I should be able to find a job. Nope, rejected, can't get a job, and you're like, oh my gosh, what happened? Did I screw up or what? And it's tough. Sometimes you got to really be introspective and say, oh man, hang in there and be tough. There are a lot of things that are not in your control, like the recession. I finished school during the 90-91 recession, which meant that I got a job that wasn't in my industry, right? I got this job with Maxell Corporation of America, and I was stoked to get it because I was stoked to get any job for that matter. But sometimes there are things that are outside of your control, and you got to hang tough. You got to work hard. You got to keep your chin up. And that is not easy to do, but you got to do it. And then also, you got to recognize that you're going to be working with other people. Full disclosure, I did not see this movie, but I love the graphic. And look, I've worked with people where I've had the boss who was a total jerk, or I've had the boss who was very inappropriate, or I had the boss who only had the job because his dad owned the company. It doesn't matter. You got to suck it up, and you got to do a good job, and you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, man, I'm working hard and I'm making it happen. And then also you're going to have some things that just come out of nowhere. I was with the Princeton Review for more than 2 decades, and they decided to restructure. Restructure? Gee, what does that mean? Well, guess what? It means that I don't have a job anymore. Holy moly, that was a surprise. And hey, like I said, you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, I'm doing good work. And the only reason I'm not here or at that company is because they decided to take it in a different direction. And that messes with your insecurities, and it messes with your confidence, but you got to hang tough and make it work. Which takes me to my last point before we get to some questions, and that is the power of networking. I know you've heard this word before, and I also know that you don't have a full or true appreciation for it, but I'm going to try to help you kind of see the power of this. The network that you have is going to be so important in your life. When you have good times, you're going to share them with your network. When you have bad times, your network is going to be your support system. And it's going to be what helps you get through the tough times, like when you get laid off or when you can't find a job. But also, when the good times come around, remember, you're going to be sharing that with your network. And your network is going to be sharing their good times with you. And that's going to open doors and open opportunities. It's going to give you, again, the support system that you need. So make sure that you are taking care of your network, because if you need something and if you haven't been talking to your friends, then you just calling them out of the blue because you want something. What's that all about? They'll probably still help you, but that's not cool. You got to be working with your friends, and you got to be keeping this network humming, keeping things warm, so that if you need something, they're there for you. And it's not just because you need something, because remember, you're going to also support them. Maybe there's something you can do for them. So maybe you're checking in to say, hey, how's it going? I just was thinking about you. Is there anything I can do for you? Right? Because you know that favor is going to turn around and you're going to need to call in that favor at some point. So again, the power of the network is absolutely huge. And I want to just sort of share that with you, that it's been, and I didn't fully appreciate it, but I've come to very much value how the network helped me in both my successes as well as when I was kind of in the dumps, helping me get through some things. And I certainly hope that you guys do a lot to kind of keep that network strong and keep those relationships warm. All right. Hopefully that wasn't too much time, because I want to save lots and lots of time for your questions. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and open up the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gamerl. That was a lot of fun. That was great. I mean, I really appreciated your experience and the energy that you brought to the presentation. That was awesome. So yeah, we do have a lot of questions coming in, and if you guys do have questions, just message them to Samartha and I, and we can ask them to Mr. Gamerl. But the first thing we have here is that you talked about earlier about you serving on a board and how that was important to you to sort of give back in volunteering in some sense. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your experience there and how that's helped you.
Yeah, I mean, we are meant for others, right? I mean, it might be tough to kind of figure out exactly what that means. And think about it. When you guys are at Bellarmine, you have to do community service. All right, that's fine. That's good, right? You should be pushed to do those sorts of things. All right, so what am I going to do? Oh, I'll volunteer here. Oh, I'll do this. Great. In the end, you're going to find what you love to do. You're going to find what kind of helps to recharge your batteries. And being a man for others is part of that. And I have a local organization called the Friendship Shelter, and they work on homelessness. And I can't say that I had a particular passion for helping with homelessness, but I really love what this organization was doing, and the fact that I could do more, the fact that my wife and I can be involved. Yeah, that's great. I love it. And it takes that type of participation. It speaks to some of that balance that I was mentioning before, which is, hey, you got to do a lot of things. And sometimes we need to just be honest and recognize that sometimes us doing things for other people helps us too. And that's kind of nice. But I love it, and try to do as much as I can.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know you talked about in your education background right now, currently, you're working for a company which uses AI in the education field. So you worked in education for a long time. What are some ways AI has changed the education industry in your experience?
Yeah, a fantastic question. And this also speaks to, this concept of finding what you love to do, and then how you apply what you love to do to other things. That's up to you, right? You guys can do whatever you want. So for example, if you like marketing, great, study marketing, and then you can apply marketing into the education sector. If you like business, fine, great, study business, and you can apply business to the education sector. Obviously, I'm just using that as an example. So in my case, I'm not a tech guy. I don't know anything. I don't know the first thing about that kind of stuff. But I know education. So this company reached out to me and said, hey, we've got this amazing AI, and we see excellent use cases in education, in learning, in testing, in assessments, et cetera. But Can you help us? Because we know technology, we don't know education. Voila. And that's where that partnership came from. So since you guys know SATs and all that kind of stuff, I'll use that as an example because it's probably pretty relevant and pretty fresh. If you want to see how you're doing on an SAT, you got to take a 3.5-hour test. That's a drag. What if I could tell you that I could give you maybe 10 questions, maybe 11 questions, and with 98% accuracy, give you your SAT score? That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Yeah, because instead of it taking 3.5 hours, it took 10 minutes or 11 minutes. Now, of course, as part of your SAT training, you're going to want to take a full-length exam at some point. But also as part of your training, you might need a snapshot of how you're doing. So now that 10-minute snapshot, which by the way is highly accurate, can then tell you, all right, you need to study this or study that. And then you can study it, and then you can get another 10-minute snapshot. And then you can kind of alter your course as you need. Again, at some point, you're going to be taking full-length tests as part of your practice. But you can see how this would be a very powerful instrument in helping students learn something, and not just SAT. What if you just need to learn math? We have a project, by the way, where we're helping train people pass the real estate licensing exam. Okay, well, hey, I want to study real estate. I got to pass this licensing test. All right, well, here you go. And now you get a snapshot of where you're doing. You get some nice sophisticated AI to help guide you in an efficient way. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it's really, really cool how, and of course, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see how technology can be very impactful in education. And even though I don't have the tech chops, I can still bring something to this party. And in collaborating and working together with these different people, we can do some pretty cool things.
Awesome. And yeah, the SAT example, personally, for me, did make a lot of sense. 3.5-hour test would definitely be a drag. Another thing I found really interesting about your background was studying abroad at LSE, a school that I personally was interested in. Could you maybe talk more about how that studying abroad experience enhanced your educational experience with now, again, working with foreign companies in the UAE and Korea and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was and I look back and I should have done like a semester abroad when I was an undergrad. I didn't quite have that opportunity. But when you leave America, you realize very quickly that the world does not revolve around America. And it's weird because you don't really know that until you leave America. It's kind of like, well, this is all I know. And it was eye-opening, absolutely eye-opening, and so refreshing to study with students from France and from the UK and from Spain and just all over, not to mention living in London kicked ass, and just kind of being able to do some really cool stuff. But, you know, we talk about trying to be open-minded. We talk about trying to be objective. And what was really helpful for me was to understand that even if I'm talking to people with different viewpoints, but we're all from the US, we don't even recognize our bias. So now I'm talking with people with different viewpoints from different cultural and other backgrounds. And oh man, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And that's when I realized the power of that international perspective, not to mention the fact that the world has gotten a lot smaller. I mean, think about it. Remember, guys like Pat and guys like me, we're old guys. I mean, we graduated Bellarmine 30 freaking years ago. A lot's happened. The world has gotten a lot smaller in those 30 years. So even more so for you guys, how globalization is a big part of what's going on, despite this sort of nationalistic thing we're in, not just in America, but globally. The world is smaller. It really does matter. So I do encourage it because it'll only make your perspectives more powerful.
Awesome. Similar to kind of what we're talking about with studying abroad, we had one question saying, how does the education system in the UAE differ from the American education system?
Yeah, that's big, boy. That was a big part of, actually, it's a big part of my career now. because, oh, I know that the Indian curriculum, CGSE, is this. Oh, I know that there's IB. Oh, I know that there's AP. Oh, okay, I know that there's a national system, regardless of the country, right? And the national system in the UAE is actually somewhat similar to the UK system, but then they also have IB and they have some American schools in the UAE. And in the end, what I found is that at the high school and under level, it's kind of all the same. You need to do the best you can with the education opportunities that you have in front of you. And it doesn't matter that your school's IB and the other school's AP. And it doesn't matter that this school's American curriculum and this school's the British system. Do the best you can and avail yourself of the education opportunities that are right there. Okay? Now, when you start to talk about undergrad, that's a whole nother animal. And I am a big fan of the US post-secondary school system, right? These are US colleges and universities. If you talk about, for example, the UK system, and just about every single school on the planet, except in America, you have to pick your track. Boom, and you're stuck. You're on a track, and that train cannot leave the track. Right now, when you're going to school in the US, yeah, you're going to head down a path, but your path can branch off, or you can change your path, and that's very difficult, if not impossible, to do in other systems. So yeah, it is interesting and it's fascinating. And of course, I wish, oh my gosh, if only I knew that when I was younger. Well, yeah, sure, that would be amazing. But hey, hopefully you guys can take some things away from it. I certainly do recommend that the US college university system is one that you should look to, but take advantage of study abroad, take advantage of maybe grad school opportunities later. But that's a whole nother conversation, which, by the way, I'm happy to have, but that's for another time.
Awesome. Another thing you recently mentioned was that you started your own business after your career with the Princeton Review. What were some of the struggles you came across while starting your own business? Maybe how like networking or balance helped you grapple with those?
Oh man, I have to say, and different people are different. I don't like being my own boss. I don't. I like working for somebody else. I'm very happy working for somebody else. That's not to say that I'm not up for taking risks. That's not to say that I'm not, that I don't enjoy a lot of the elements of running your own business. But man, I'm very happy working for somebody else. But in terms of challenges, oh man, you start your own company, you do it all. I'm not afraid of hard work. I love rolling up my sleeves. But man, when I got started, I had 0 clients. 0 clients, by the way, means 0 revenue. And yet you're spending a lot of money. You're spending a lot of things. Pardon me. You're spending a lot of time, spending a lot of money. Time is money, but money is money to get this thing off the ground. And that's just how it goes. And it goes a lot slower than you think. And there are those challenges, thankfully, that, remember I talked about our network? My wife is part of my network, and oh, she's awesome. And I love her. And I would never have been able to do what I've been able to do without her, right? This is an example of the sum being greater than just those 2 parts. Right? The fact that she had a good job and I could work at the Ocean Institute making minimum wage. The fact that I had a great job when she said, you know what, I'm not happy with my job, I quit. And she just quit. That's that balance. If I didn't have as good a job, she probably would have said, you know what, I have to stick with my crappy job because otherwise, how are we going to pay for things? But thankfully, I did have a great job, and she could say, you know what, I'm quitting because this is not healthy, right? Like, it's such a bad job, it's not healthy. So there are a lot of those challenges, and starting scratch, starting your own business. Yeah, I'm not going to say that it doesn't have its fun aspects, but oh man, it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time to get things going. And just when you get things going, that doesn't always mean it's going to maintain either. Sometimes you run into some hiccups, and that's another challenge.
Yeah, interesting. And just to kind of go off of what you're talking about your network, we have a question that said, what are some of the key ways that you can expand your network during the good times that you talked about?
Well, I tell you, you're going to want to expand your network during the good times and the bad times. You're going to be wanting to expand your network the whole time. And I think that part of it just has to do with making it conscious. Bring it to the conscious, bring it to the forefront to say, you know what? I haven't talked to my friend Pat Arnold in a while. I just need to send him a note, send him an email, send him a text. And it might just be, hey, you know what? You just popped in my mind. I thought I'd say hi. It could be something as simple as that. Or it could have said, you know, hey, bummer about the 49ers, but my wife's Bills beat your 49ers. Sorry. Whatever. And if you bring it to the conscious part of your mind, then that's going to be helpful. And just keeping those conversations there, keeping those relationships warm. Let me also be very clear. There are some people in my network that I might talk to once a year. Honestly. But you know what? I'm going to talk to them once a year. Or if something happens and somebody pops to mind, then you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take that moment to just say, hey, you know what? I don't even know why, but you popped in my mind. Or, hey, this thing happened and it made me think of you. So I just thought I'd say hi. And whether it's good times or bad times, do that. Now, one thing I will say is that when you start to talk to people and you start to find these common interests, then you go, oh, yeah, this ed tech thing. Oh, hey, I've got this guy that I know who's in ed tech. I should just put you guys in touch with one another. Yo, man, that would be great. I'd appreciate it. And then you set up a call, or actually in the good old days, you used to be able to get together in person. Ooh, crazy, huh? Like, oh, hey, let's go get a coffee. And you go get a coffee, and now you're expanding your network because now you're meeting somebody, but you also then connected with somebody, right? And it's those sorts of things, but bringing it to the consciousness, bringing it to, it's something you do. Like, I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to study Italian. I'm going to I'm going to double check my network and I'm going to see if there's somebody I haven't talked to in a while.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you mentioned that you took Mr. Healy's course at Bellman, which is a little bit of an experience for you. Were there any courses at Bellman that you especially loved, or things that maybe propelled your career later on?
Yeah, I certainly didn't have an appreciation for Mr. Healy when I was in his classes. I actually took a few of his classes and did, of course, speech and debate. And there were so many. The one thing I will say is that to have an appreciation for learning, to have an appreciation for enjoying teaching and enjoying learning. And by the way, that even goes for the courses you don't like. Like, hey, man, I don't like this, but I got to take it. Oh, hey, the teacher likes it. Well, now I'm kind of liking it. Oh my gosh, that's kind of cool. And hey, I'm a realist. I know that not every class was amazing and not every teacher was amazing, but disproportionately at Bellarmine, I gained an appreciation for learning. And that helped me sort of understand what I need to bring to the party, right? If I can bring, and I know that many of you guys don't know Tom Alessandri, but if you can bring the passion that Tom Alessandri brought to his Faulkner seminar, are you kidding me? He got me to read William Faulkner. That's just nuts. Nobody should read William Faulkner, but he got me to read it and he got me to love it. And it's that kind of a thing. And so now it's like, all right, maybe I'm not teaching a class. Maybe I'm just doing my job, or maybe I'm just doing whatever. I got to bring that. I got to bring that level of passion, that level of interest and excitement. And sometimes it's because I love it. Sometimes I don't love it. Doesn't matter. I got to bring that level of passion. Sometimes, you know what? You just got to suck it up and do it, right? Just like the Steve Jobs thing. Okay, hey, if you don't love it, you still got to bring your A game. Don't you dare use that as an excuse to bring anything other than your A game. But if you do love it, well, then it becomes a little bit easier.
Awesome. So I think we have time for one more question from the students. So I know you mentioned that you made a switch earlier in your career from sales to education. What were the key factors that played into your decision to make that transition?
That was easy. Those were decisions that I had no control over, because I finished my grad school in the 90-91 recession, and I just needed to get a job. I mean, I was out of work for a long time, just not able to get a job. And luckily, yay, my network. I knew a guy who said, you know what, he's hiring some junior person to just do some sales. And the guy's like, oh, really? Your friend? Masters? Oh, went to London? Dude, I don't want to hire this guy. And luckily got him to hire me. And we worked really well together. We worked for 2 years together. We even started another company together, and we were wildly successful. But I didn't want to do sales. I mean, there was nothing about that I liked. I brought my A game. I was good at it. I made a lot of money. I bought a freaking house. But I didn't want to do that. And I had kind of the good sight, and frankly, I'll even say the guts to leave that job, to quit that job. But also I had my support network in my wife, Ann, to be able to allow me to then go into the Ocean Institute, where I was going back to education. I was teaching kids about marine science. I was teaching kids how to dissect a squid. But then I realized that, okay, I can't, making minimum wage was fine for a year. But now this is getting ridiculous. I need to find that balance. And at the entire time, from undergrad to grad school to working at Maxwell Corporation to Ocean Institute, I was always doing something with Princeton Review. I was always keeping that network strong, maybe teaching an SAT class on the side, or teaching a GMAT class on the side. And when an opportunity came in to do something full-time with Princeton Review at the local office, I was there. I was ready. And the rest, as they say, is history. So a lot of things that are not in your control, and then a lot of things that you drive through, again, my theme, the power of the network.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed speaking with you and learning about your experiences. I'm sure everyone else in the club did as well. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Hey guys.
You
hey
bet.
guys. This is Mr. Arnold. One thing is, I think that was really readily apparent from Mr. Gamerl's presentation, is passion. I think you can sense his passion as he goes and presents to us. And I think if you bring that passion to whatever you do, it's a big part of being successful. I'm just listening to him right now, and I'm fired up to go out and do my job. So if you can bring that energy each and every day, it certainly gives you a leg up on the competition. So that was awesome, Michael.
Hey man, happy to. Oh, by the way, for what it's worth, you guys should all know that I was talking to Mr. Arnold about, because my background happens to be in education and test prep and college admissions and all that stuff, I am happy to do a separate session to go with your questions about college admissions and all of that stuff. I'll leave that for you guys to organize if you want to do it. I'm here. I'm happy to be a resource, but you need to drive that bus. And if you want to do it, you can get a hold of me directly. Again, just keep me posted.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gamerl.
That was so good, guys. Let's leave it with the Go Bells. And again, thank you so much, Michael.
Absolutely.
Go Bells.
Go Bells.
Go Bells. Rock and roll, gents.
Go Bells. Thank you.
Okay. Ciao.